Okay, so good morning everyone. So today we are going to discuss about the concepts that are related to our system call. And but before discussing about system calls, we need to discuss about some concept like the internal operation, how it is going to get executed in our operating system. Like in the previous sessions, we discussed that how the user is providing information or user is providing commands to the system and how the operating system is converting that into zeros and ones and it is providing to the hardware. So in between we discuss some topics or some words, something called as kernel, and same way we discussed about something called system calls, right? So how this kernel is actually playing a role, we did not discuss more about it. So that we are going to discuss first and then we'll go to the system calls and all related to that, okay? So coming to the basic thing here, so first thing what we are going to discuss here is operating system operations. So in this we are going to discuss about what we call how the operations, what are the different operations we can perform on the system, but basically we will discuss that in the second unit. Right now in this we are going to discuss how the kernel is going to play an important role. Actually there are two different mode of operation which we usually can perform on a system. That is what we call it as user mode and kernel mode. I'll explain you in the coming slides. Okay. So how this kernel is playing an important role for performing operations and all, that we will be explaining in this particular concept. Then we have something called transition from user to, yeah, this is also actually related to this particular concept only, both are interrelated. And then finally we have something called operating system services. So obviously what is the main purpose of operating system here is it has to provide services to us. Okay, the main purpose why we have designed or why we have developed operating system is they should provide services to the user. So what kind of services are actually being provided by the operating system to the user, that we are going to discuss in this. There are few things. Okay, remember technical terms we are not going to discuss in this. It will be something like introductory part only. That's it. Then we have something called as introduction to system calls. So we will be coming to the main part, something called as system calls. Now here, whatever the system calls we are going to discuss, we can write programs using this. And mostly you people are already written programs. Okay, using Java programming and C program, you have already written it. Okay, but thing is, we people don't know that those functions actually we use. For example, in a C program, you people are writing a program to read the content of a file. You want to read a content of a file. So what you people are doing? Your people are actually calling certain functions like read operation, read function. You people are calling that read function. What you people are using in your system calls is nothing but in your program, that is nothing but a system call. So that those things means already we have used in our program these functions, but unfortunately we don't know that these are what we call it a system call. So I will tell you few system calls. I'll show you up so that you can get a clear idea that what exactly system calls are meant. Remember, whenever you people want to interact with the system, so definitely system calls, using system calls only you can interact with the system, okay, your operating system. So these system calls are called as user related system calls, okay. And then we have the different type of system calls. So basically these are most important here. So we have around 5 different type of system calls. Process control, remember in the previous session we discussed about process management, right? And in that we discussed that what is the main purpose of operating system for this process controlling. So that is nothing but creating and deleting a process, suspending a process, resuming a process, right? We already discussed it. There we have discussed in a theoretical format. Now we will see the functions, the programming functions, what we can use in order to create or delete a process, or to resume a process, to suspend a process, all that we are going to see in this case. Next, we have something called as file management. So definitely, since our system actually consists of lot of many different type of files and directories, to manage them, to access them using system calls, we are going to see what are the commands we can use in this particular scenario. And then we have something called as device management, means hardware, your internal hardware, how we people can manage it, that also we are going to see in this particular system call. And finally we have information maintenance and communication. Since one system want to communicate with another system, so definitely we require communication, we require network. So this is going to play a vital role. Without network we may not communicate, not only with the other systems, the processes. See, your system actually consists of multiple processes. You know, right now you people are actually watching this particular video, but apart from that, internally the system, whatever the device you people are using it, it is internal in the background. Multiple processes are executing in the same time. At the end of this session, during the last 5 minutes, I will show you practically how the background process, where you can see the background process, where you can see the foreground process. I will show you, and how these processes are executing it. I'll show you a practical representation since it's a video, right? So I can show you in this particular scenario. Okay, don't worry. Okay, after that we have something called as operating system structures. So since you know that in the first and foremost time when these scientists developed this operating system, we don't have Windows 10 or Windows XP like that. So we started step by step. Means the human beings who, when they started developing this operating system, they started one at a time. So the first and foremost operating system structure what we have is the basic MS-DOS. Right now, today in today's world, no one is using this MS Word, but this is the first operating system structure what we have. Then came layered approach. Obviously, you know, when you start working on one particular task which you don't know, so initially you get some idea and you start doing it. But once you start performing that operation, then you will come to know, okay, what are the drawbacks it is having? What is the best part that particular operating system structure is having? Then what you will do in order to overcome the drawbacks, you will try to develop a new model, new version. So that is what we call it as layered version. Same way microkernels, modules, and hybrid systems. So all these are the different structures and they came one after another. First came simple structure, then came layered approach, then microkernels, then modules, and finally hybrid. Okay, so these are what we are going to discuss. Most probably we'll try to complete the type of system calls, or till introduction to system calls we'll try to complete, and the remaining portion we'll see in the next session. Okay, let's begin. So coming to the operating system operations, so what are the operations we can perform? Well, this is in the previous session we discussed that we have something called interrupt. The operating system, the whatever we are performing interrupts. So all the operating systems right now we have are interrupt driven. What do you mean by interrupt driven is nothing but anyone can interrupt anytime. Like for example, right now I'm showing you the slide. Now I'm moving a mouse. What I'm doing? I'm interrupting it. Now I'm taking the pen here. I start clicking on this. Okay, I just kept a tick here. So what is this? This is an interrupt. Right now, what is the work going on? A slide is being displayed to all the users who are actually present in this particular session. Apart from that, even I am performing some different operations. See here? So this is what we call interrupt. The other name, okay, for software related interrupts is what we call it as exception or trap. I gave you the example too. In Java programming, you will be writing programs using try and catch. So when you people are trying to catch an exception, like something like division by zero, yeah, this has been provided here. So division by zero you're doing. So everyone knows that we cannot divide any number by zero. So definitely that is an exception. So what happens now? Now, if you're not catching that exception, your system will enter into a finite loop. Your system will never come out from that particular program, right? So in order to make sure that system is not getting hanged up or not getting into an infinite loop of that particular program, we are using try and catch. That is nothing but we call it as interrupts, or we can call it as a traps. Okay. So related to hardware interrupts, remember we cannot generate hardware interrupts. We can generate only software interrupts. Okay. And these interrupts, how we can generate? Using, we can use try, okay, and then we can use catch. So these are the two commands what we know in our Java programming. So apart from that, there are other commands too. So that we will see later. Okay, for timing, you can remember this. Okay, now other process problems include that. So that's what we are explaining here. So here, what is saying is that system is entering into infinite loop. For example, you people are not using try and catch, okay? And you people started something like, you know, simply written the program, and you started giving values where you're dividing a value with the number zero. What will happen? Your system will not show any result. It will keep on showing you the blank screen. That's it. It will not show you any information in that. Why it is not showing information means we cannot divide a number with zero. So anytime it will divide a number with zero, what will happen? It will get a reminder. Again, it will try to divide it. It will get a reminder again. So that is what comes under infinite loop. So that's very typical. So in order to make sure this situation do not arise, we use this interrupts concept. Okay. So next, this is the one which we were talking about here, the dual mode operation. Actually, operating system provides two different type of modes here. Okay, so one is called as a user mode, another is what we call it as a kernel. mode. These modes are most important. Since kernel, we know that the heart of a computer system is nothing but we call as CPU, and CPU actually mainly consists of a kernel which directly interacts with the hardware. So these are the two modes that are most important in order to perform any operation in your operating system. Okay, and apart from that, we have a terminology called as mode bit. This is important. Okay, this mode bit is actually of two types. That is nothing but 0 and 1. So only two bits we do have here, 0 and 1. Okay, so 0 will be representing one of the mode. Means if the mode bit is set, actually it is a variable. In simple terms, in programming language, if I talk about, this mode bit is nothing but a variable. Like if people are declaring variables, right, int a comma b comma c. In the same way, this mode bit is also a variable. But this variable is actually a binary variable. It can take only two values, either 0 or 1. So whenever this bit is represented with 0, so it is in one of the two modes. So what are the modes we have? User mode and kernel. Among these two, one of the mode is represented with these two bits. I'll explain in the previous slide with the diagram, then you can understand easily. Okay, so here, this is what it's talking about. So in dual mode, we have two different, this is what you people have to remember, two modes are there, user mode, kernel mode. So user mode means whenever the user is giving instructions to the operating system to perform anything, so all the instructions will be executed in user level mode. Kernel mode in the sense when these instructions given by the user are actually transmitted to the kernel, then the kernel starts functioning. Means it will convert into zeros and ones. Operating system converts into zeros and ones and provides it to the kernel. Now the kernel will start executing and making use of the hardware. So that thing comes under this. Okay, so that is what we call as kernel mode. So here, let me go to the next slide and show you the diagram so that you can understand easily. Okay, so this is what actually happens. Okay, timer we'll discuss later. Just look at this diagram. This is most important diagram here. See, so we, as I told you, we have two different type of modes here, user process or user mode and kernel mode. You can see here. Now, I think you can understand this. User mode is represented with a bit 1 and the kernel mode is represented with bit 0. So whenever this variable is set to 0, you can understand that, okay, right now the system is in kernel mode. So kernel is performing the operation. If the mode bit is transmitted to 1, then we can call it as a user mode. Means right now the functions are executed in the user level itself. So hardware level instructions are not getting executed. Okay, but why these are required is, so it will be, I'll explain the simple example. You people are writing a program, C program. So initially what you will do, you will open a text editor and you will start writing the program and you will store it with the extension called .c at some particular location. Now what is the next step we people are going to do is, we will be actually performing not performing, we will be compiling that particular program. So that compilation, how we are doing, control F9 is the command we are using for C programming. So using that, we are going to compile it. So once you start compiling, so means your program is under process. Your program has been converted into a process. Okay, so when you're performing that after compilation, you will start executing it, right? So when you're starting executing, like you people have given three variables, okay, which is of data type integer. So what will happen now, that three integer variables, whatever you have declared, we need to provide a space for that. Okay, so internally, so in the hardware. So who can provide that? Only the kernel can provide that, because kernel is the one which can interact with the hardware. So here these system calls, so here system calls comes into picture. So system call is nothing but, I told you, this is a function. That function is what it is going to do is, it will actually send a trap in the sense it will transmit the data to the kernel. Okay, system call, how it will be transmitted is, internally operating system will take these system calls. These system calls will be taken by the operating system in between, and then it will be converted and transmitted to the kernel. Now during this transmission, what happens, the first and foremost thing they have to do is, they have to convert the mode bit from to 0, right? Initially, when this entire process was going on, the mode bit is equal to 1. But when these system calls are taken by operating system and transmitted to kernel, so this mode bit has to be converted to 0. So once it is done, now the kernel will start performing the operation. So whatever the formula you have given, C equal to A plus B. So A and B variables will be taken by the kernel in a format of zeros and ones, and then that will be executed. And once this execution is done, you should be provided with the result, right? Now this will transmit the result to the operating system. Now operating system, what it does, it will provide the results back to you and onto the screen. So when from kernel mode, again it is the control is transmitted to the user mode, the mode bit has to be again shifted to 1. Okay, this is most important. So this is the way how internally your operating system is performing the operation. Okay, so and remember to explain this much time it has taken. But if you observe carefully, when you are executing the program, you are getting the results within seconds, right? 0.385 seconds, 0.28 seconds, 0.12 seconds. So that much speed means this entire process, whatever the process I have explained you, this entire process takes place in seconds. Okay, seconds and nanoseconds and microseconds. And that actually depends upon the operating system you people are using. Some people might be using Windows XP, some people might be using Windows 10, some might be using Windows 7. So there will be some variations, right? So Windows 10 might be executing much more faster than Windows XP, obviously, that's for sure, no doubt in that. So that things actually plays an important role. So depending upon the operating system, the execution of this entire process, okay, will be depending or it will be varying. Okay, so this is what related to your operations. What are how the operations are actually executed in your operating system. And remember one point, we cannot show this practically. Okay, like processing is done. That this is just we can imagine it internally how it is transmitting, but actually we cannot show it practically. That's because it is done internally through with the help of a hardware. So within the hardware, how that information is transmitted, we know that is using electricity, that is zeros and ones. So whenever you want to transmit one, means you should pass one. You want to pass electricity. Whenever you want to convert the mode bit 0, you should not pass any kind of electric current. So that is what how it does. So that we cannot see practically. Okay, so that is what the thing. Now apart from this, so you people are executing programs, right? So since I told you, in your system, multiple processes are executing simultaneously. It's not that only one program. As I told you in the beginning itself, right now I'm showing you this particular slide and performing some operation. This is foreground. Foreground process is going on. It is a one type of process that is going on right now. But apart from that, in the background, a lot of other processes are getting executed. Those are purely system related processes. Okay, and remember one more point, that the priority for the user process is more when compared to the system. So background process, whichever is going, it will go smoothly, slowly, very slowly. But if you are performing or you are giving any command to the system, that will be executed very fastly. Okay, there is a lot of difference now. Okay, so our user process related information will have more priority than system processes. System processes, that's why these are being executed in the background. We don't have to see. I will show you the processes. Don't worry. And the end of the session, I will show you the different processes, background processes, what we do have. What are the system process that will be executed. Okay. Okay, fine. So here, when I told you that multiple processes are executed, well, every process should be given certain time. It's not that only one process keep on executing for 1 hour or 2 hours, right? You people are writing a program for addition of two numbers and you are executing. Well, if it takes 1 hour time to get executed, it is not correct, right? You may be wanted to create a new document or you may be wanted to write a new program. So that program you want to execute. But if the first process is taking around 1 hour of time, then you are going to execute the second program. That should not take place. So in order to overcome that, we are using a concept called as timer. Okay, timer is there. So every process, whenever it is executed, it will have a timer. A timer is triggered whenever a process starts executing. And what is the main purpose of this particular timer is to prevent the infinite loop. For example, I told you division by zero. If you're not using try and catch, and if you're trying to execute the program, what will happen automatically? That particular program will enter into infinite loop and it will never try to come out. So in order to prevent such a kind of scenarios, we are using this particular timer. Okay, so this timer is nothing but, if a technical terms we discuss about this, timer is also a variable. We generally call it as a counter. Yeah, I think you people usually use counters, right? When we people are writing looping statements, like for example, you are using a for loop for I equal to 1, I less than equal to 10, I plus plus, right? So what is that I plus plus? That is the counter. So whenever the condition, you are incrementing the counter, okay, after each and every execution, and when that condition gets failed, this entire process will stop. Same way here for timer, timer is a variable which is something nothing but a counter. Now whenever this counter, so whenever a process starts executing, this counter will also be initiated. Since I told that every process will have a default timer, let us suppose I have given 30 seconds. I have given one process is executing, and for that I gave 30 seconds. Okay. Now what will happen exactly here is, as soon as the process start executing, this will start decrementing, like 30, 29, 28 in that. So as soon as when it will reach the value 0, immediately the system will interrupt. Now remember, we are not interrupting. The system will interrupt that particular program. Means even though your program entered into infinite loop, when this timer reaches 0, immediately it is going to interrupt your program. So you will be coming out of that and you can start executing the next program, whatever we have. That is what we usually call it as a timer. This will be very this is most important required whenever we people are executing complex problems. Sometimes the system gets slowed down. Okay, only one process is consuming the entire memory space. Now we cannot allow that. Why? Because we have other tasks also that need to be done. So in that case, this timer plays a very vital role. Okay, so this is what exactly related to the operation, how the operations are actually performed in your operating system. Now let's come to the operating system services. Well, I told you that there are different services. Actually, the main purpose why we developed this operating system is, for the first point is for maximum utilization of the resources. Whatever the resources here is nothing but your hardware resources, your CPU resources, all those resources we want to utilize to the 100%. Okay, remember, actually we are saying 100%, but never till now anyone is able to use our system. Okay, that may be a personal computer, that may be a laptop or anything. We did not use it 100%. We can never use 100%. There will be some problem, one or the other problem will be existing for sure. That we will discuss in the coming units. Okay, so that I'll explain you how, why we are not able to do that. But still we are discussing here about services. So there are several different type of services that are provided by the operating system. Okay, so what are the services that have been provided? Well, then I'll explain this with a small example, then I'll see that. Now, this is example. Now, if you remember in the previous session what we discussed about the structure of operating system, where you might have seen something called as hardware, operating system. So here he is talking about what we call services. So these services are what we usually call as programs, right? System programs. We have represented something called system programs, and on top of that we had something called users. This is what we do have. So in between these programs, whatever the things we have, these are the different services that have been provided here. Okay, so what are the different services we do have that we'll see here? So first and foremost is nothing but program execution. So these are the services that are actually provided with the operating system and that can be used in order to access the hardware. So what are the services we have is program execution. Then we have IBA operations, file systems, communication, resource allocation, accounting, error detection, protection, and security. Okay. Now among these, the program execution, IBO, file systems, and communication, these three are these four services what are provided by the computer system. These are user related services. Means these are the one which are provided to us. Okay. But whereas coming to the resource allocation, accounting, and error detection, these are the services provided by the operating system to the hardware. Okay. Remember, the first four, whatever you're saying, these are the services provided to the user. But the remaining 5, 6, and 7, these three are actually provided by the services that are provided to the hardware. Okay, how? First, we'll discuss about program execution. So coming to program execution, what is saying here is we want to execute our program, so definitely some platform should be provided. So in this program execution, we have actually interfaces. Okay, there are around 3 different type of interfaces. You people are very much familiar with that. The first one is something we call it as command line. I think everyone knows about command line, right? So we have command line here. So command line is nothing but in this what we can say you might have used in your C programming too. So we will provide the inputs when you're writing the program directly on the black screen. So when we are executing the program, at that time only we will be providing the input parameters. So that is what we call it as command line. Apart from that, we also have something called as batch interface. So this one I don't think anyone might have used batch interface. Well, I'm not able to familiarly use it, but still I'm writing. Okay. So batch interface, what do you mean by batch interface? Here is nothing but I'll explain that with the help of an example. During Java programming, you do have gone through Java programming, right? So when you people initially for the first time you started writing a program, what you people did is you people have set something called as environmental variables, right? You people might have used environment, we have set the environmental variables. Now those variables, whatever you're setting it, you're doing it for the first time. Later on, we don't have to do it. Let's suppose you don't know how to set the environment variables. So you cannot execute your Java program. So what you will do is, whatever the commands you're writing in the environmental variables, actually we are not writing any commands, we are setting the path, right? So that path, what you people are going to do, you will write those paths in a file. Yes. You people are going to write those environment variable path, whatever you're setting it up, you will write it in a file, single file. After writing in that particular file, you will convert that into a batch file. Nothing but you will storing that file dot batch, BAT. The extension is something like this. I don't remember perfectly, but it's BAT, I think. Okay. So next time what happens, every time what you have to do is, whenever you're executing a program, you have to type those statements first. Then you can start executing your program. But using batch file, what happens? You have to simply call this particular file. So whatever the commands or whatever the path you have set in this particular file, those will be executed directly. So it reduces our work. That is the best part of this particular batch interface. After this, the last one, which everyone uses it perfectly. Everyone uses it. Okay, that is nothing but your graphical user interface. Okay, so this one I think you people are much more familiar when compared to command line and batch interface. Command line mostly we can use during our C programming or Java programming concepts, that to a basic level. Later on we will just go for graphical part. Okay, so coming to graphical user interface, what do you mean by GUI is nothing but it's a window. It's a window which will have a pointing device. Right now you people are seeing my screen sharing, right? This is a window and it does have a pointer, right? Using this pointer I'm doing certain different kind of activities. So this is what we call it as GUI. GUI is nothing but a window which has a pointing device using which we can perform different operations. Like I'm taking an eraser right now. I'm just going to, so this is GUI purely based on GUI. So that is what it's saying. Now I'm taking the arrow again. That's what we call it as GUI. Next we have something called as I/O operation. So definitely several different type of operations that need to be executed here, right? So I/O operations, what are the different I/O operations we do have here? So basically, whenever you people are executing any program, there is a possibility that they may require some different type of resources. That resources may be related to a file, that may be related to something called as input output devices, right? Okay, so they wanted to access those resources. So here the operating system provides this I/O operation service so that we can perform our task easily. For example, you are writing a program where you wanted to read a file. Okay, so reading a file and storing that in whatever the content is present in that file, you want to store in a new file. So what happens here? These files are located in some D drive or E drive. So what you will do when you're writing a program, you'll write in a such a way that you will try to access those file names. Means you will be asking the name of the file from where you want to read the content. Okay, and then you will be giving the name of the file where you want to store that information. So how you're doing that means with the help of a system call. Okay, using system calls only you are doing it up. That is nothing but functions. But when you're giving it internally, system should provide a uh, communication through which your entire program gets executed smoothly without any interruption. So that is what the service provided for IBA operation. Same way we have something called as file systems. So in file systems, what it is the services it is providing is nothing but in this we can perform like read, write, okay, reading the file, writing a file, we can create directories, we can delete directories and files. Okay, these all the services are actually provided. Now remember one thing, how these services are provided means these are purely based upon your system calls. In order to perform operations on this, you will be having system calls. System calls are nothing but functions. Like for example, you have a system call called as write, bracket open, bracket close. So this is one function you can directly use in your programming language. Yeah, in C program you can use it, but only when you're playing with files. Okay, whenever you're trying to access a file, open a file, delete a file, rename a file, then only we can use these functions. Write a file. If you want to open a file, you can use open command. You want to delete a file, you have something called as delete a file. Okay, all these things comes into picture in this format. Okay, now one more point which we need to consider when we are discussing file systems is whenever you people are using files, you know that it has certain permissions, right? We do have three different type of permissions on any kind of file. It may be a PDF file, it may be a Word document, or it may be a Excel sheet, anything, or a PowerPoint. All these are files. Now, every file will have certain permission. Let us suppose I have mailed you the PDF. I have mailed the textbook of operating system in a PDF format. Now, when I am transmitting it, I will make sure that you people can access that particular file only for reading. You should not modify. I will not give access for modification, right? We have three different type of permissions: read, write, execute. Okay, so these three you'll be coming across in your Unix. Okay, Unix. Whenever you people are dealing with Unix system, you'll come across how to use this: read, write, execute. So what happened here? Right now, I have shared a file with you. That may be a Word file or a PDF file, anything. I am giving only the read permission to you. I'm not giving you the write and execute permission. Then what will happen? Simply you people can read that. So these permissions also will be taken care in this particular service. That service is also provided by this particular file. The next, coming to the communication here, communication plays a vital role. As I told you that there are multiple processes running in your system. Now these multiple processes may try to communicate with each other. Now apart from that, there are processes which might be executing in other systems, and these processes might want to communicate with another. I'll give you a practical example. Let us suppose you wanted to send an email to your friend. So what you people are doing? You people are opening a browser, right? Google Chrome or what we call Mozilla, that depends upon the user. Now, whenever you're opening that particular web browser, what does that mean? You have created a new process. And within that, you have opened a new tab. So that is nothing but a child process. Now, within that tab, you people are typing gmail.com and you're giving username and password. And then what you're doing, you're trying to send a mail to your friend. So what happens here? The process present in your system. What is the process right now you have here is the web browser. And within the web browser, you have created a child process called as gmail.com. Now, if you attach anything to that particular process, that is a different scenario now again. Suppose you are sending simple mail, hi, how are you? So that's entirely different. But if you are attaching any file to that, okay, I am sending, hello, I am sending so-and-so document, you can refer it. Okay, so what happens here, you're attaching another file there or another resource is required because this file is located in your C or D drive, and from there this information has to be loaded into your Gmail. So once you're done, what you're doing, you're transmitting, you're sending, right? You click on send button and that mail will be transmitted to the process which is present in your friend system. Remember, so here two different processes in two different systems are trying to communicate with each other. So this is a possibility. Now, since processes within the system can communicate, the processes outside the system can communicate. So definitely we need to provide some kind of mechanism. Means we in the sense here, the operating system should provide some kind of service. Generally we can use. And remember, these services are in the sense nothing but programs, protocols. We discussed in computer networks. Okay, sorry, computer networks is not completed to you. So in computer network comes across, we use protocols for transmitting. For example, if you want to use web browser net, what is the protocol we usually use? Is the basic protocol is HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So that is nothing but we call it as a service. Okay, so that is what we are using here. So here in communication, we have two different type of modes. One is what we call it as shared memory. Well, I'll explain this in detail in the next unit because shared memory and message passing, these two will come in your second unit. So I'll just give a small idea so that you can have. If you talk about shared memory here, what happens? You have multiple processes within your system. This is your system. And within this, you people have created multiple process. Maybe this is your Word document, this is your MP4 or MP3 player, or this is your MS Paint. Now, shared memory, what will have internally, the system will provide you shared memory. One small amount of memory, maybe like 20 MB is allocated. Okay, this 20 MB memory has been allocated. Whoever wants to use any process which wants to use this particular memory, they have to first register. Let us suppose this MS document got registered in this particular 20 MB file, okay, memory. Same way, this also registered in this and this also have registered to this. So what happens now, whatever the operation you are performing here, that will be stored in this. Now let us suppose this particular process wanted to access the information present in this. So he will not directly communicate with this, he will directly come here. And since he has stored this process, P1 has already stored the information here, so P2 will directly access the information from this particular shared memory. Same way P3. Okay, so P3 can also access the same information. This is what we call it as shared memory. This is present within your system. We cannot provide this shared memory to multiple systems. If that is required, then we need to use higher level what we call infrastructures, like for example Amazon Azure. Okay, so these Amazon Web Services have been provided, so like that we need to use, then only we can provide it. Okay, but basically in your system we can provide shared memory. And what about message passing? I gave you the example. Gmail, you people are transmitting a mail. So how you're transmitting? That is nothing but in a format of a message. So we have two process. This is in your system, process one in your system, process 2 in another system. So here you people are sent a mail. So how you're doing it? You're sending using a message. This message will have some syntax, some parameters that we will be saying in the second unit, not here. Okay, so this you people remember. Shared memory and message passing are the two techniques or the services that are provided for communication purpose. Okay, now user interfaces already I discussed. We have three interfaces that only comes to program execution part also. Okay, so here, after this, okay, fine. Till here, whatever we discussed, these four concepts are actually related to user level services. But apart from that, the operating system provides services to the system also. That is nothing but resource allocation, accounting, error detection. So what do you mean by resource allocation here is nothing but, so since we say that our laptop actually consists of many different type of resources, right? We have a CPU time. Okay, we have hardware, we have RAM. So in hardware we have RAM. Okay, then we have external hard disk. Right. So all these are resources only. Apart from that, we have USB ports, so we can attach a pen drive there. So that is also one type of resource. Now, what is saying in this particular segment, what services are provided in this is, uh, how much amount of space or the memory is been allocated to which process. Okay, the main purpose of operating system in resource allocation is how much amount of memory is actually provided by the user to the user and how much memory is actually left behind. Okay, so whether if some process is requesting a new amount of memory, can we allocate from the existing one? And once it is allocated and once the process completes its task, it has to get the memory back so that it can be given to some other process. That all those functions will be actually taken care by resource allocation. Okay, coming to accounting, accounting is also similar to that. It actually same. It will keep track of how many resources have been used or which resources given to which particular process. and when it is going to complete the means when that process is going to terminate it, so that I can read that the operating system can get back that particular resource back. All that information will be present in a accounting system. So this is like, in the format of a table. It may store it internally in the operating system. That accounting may be stored in the format of a table, or it may be using some tag or some kind of other mechanisms in order to store the information. Okay, so that thing comes under that. Next, we have error detection. Well, error detection is most important, right? As I told you, you people are written a program where you people are not using try and catch, and you're trying to execute a program something like division by zero. So what will happen here? Definitely error will come. So system, if you people are not trying to catch it up, if you, so how we can catch it? Using system calls, that is nothing but try and catch. But if we are not using that, okay, if we are not using that, system should be in a position to catch that exception, or else what will happen? Your entire program will be consuming your entire CPU. I mean the RAM, the memory, as well as CPU time, and we will not be able to move to some other process for execution. So that's the problem there. So for that purpose, the operating system should be in a position to control these kind of errors. Okay, so if possible, you people try to write a simple program for division by zero without using try and catch in Java, and with using try and catch in Java. See the difference. Even though if you use a try and catch without using, if you're writing a program using try and catch, still it will catch the exception and it will tell you there is some mistake there. But if you write the same program in C program, I mean using C program, there will be a lot of different errors will come. You just see the difference there. There's a lot of difference. Okay, so that is what comes under error detection. How the system is detecting it. Okay, fine. So till here we discussed. This is all related to your operating system services. So first we have something called user interfaces. So we have three user interfaces: GUI, bash, and command. Using this, we can execute a program. So program can be either executed normally or abnormally. Okay, so there should be a termination for each and every program. Then we discussed about IBA operations. Well, these are required very much important for execution purpose. Okay, so whatever the IBA devices are there, that should be controlled and it should be given to the processors whenever required necessary without any interruption. Same way, file systems, we have different operations and that services or different services related to file, like reading a file, opening a file, deleting a file, concatenating a file, all these should be taken care of. Okay, these are the services provided. Same way, communication. So with this, we actually cover, the operating system services what we do have. Fine, so that's what we have here. Okay, fine. So these are the what we have. So user interface, program execution. So whatever I have explained using this diagram, whatever is present in this diagram, that is what I am representing here. File system manipulation, communication, error. So these first six, whatever we have discussed, comes under user related services. But whereas coming to the remaining three, all these three comes under system related what we call services. Okay, so this is what comes under that. Okay, the next slide is all related to your system calls. So we will start tomorrow this particular session, since it's already we have 7 minutes. But I'll show you. Since I told you that I'll show you how internally in our system how the processes are running. It will take some time. So we'll stop here. Okay, so for tomorrow we will start discussing about system calls. So okay, so let me stop the recording.